The clock on the wall has no second hand. It is an old thing, the kind that measures time in polite jumps, each minute clicking forward like a decision made without discussion. Someone has hung it slightly crooked, and no one fixes it. Not because they don't notice, because fixing it would mean admitting they have noticed anything at all. A man at the far end of the room keeps turning a pencil between his fingers. Roll, stop, roll, stop. The wood is worn smooth where his thumb lives. Every few turns, he presses the graphite point to a scrap of paper and draws a line that isn't a word, a mark that means nothing, a habit shaped like control. Near the door, a pot of coffee gives off a tired heat. The smell is thin, burned at the edges, but it fills the space anyway because empty air feels wrong. Someone has poured a cup and forgotten to drink it. A brown skin has formed across the surface, unbroken, like a film over a pond in winter. It trembles when a boot shifts on the floorboards. There are voices in the hallway, muffled and passing, as if the building itself has learned to keep secrets. A laugh appears, short, restrained, and disappears again. It doesn't belong in here. It brushes the room and is gone, leaving behind the faint discomfort of something out of place. A file cabinet sits open by a hand's width. Inside, folders stand like thin gravestones. No one closes the drawer. No one opens it farther. It stays like that, caught mid-action, as if even metal has decided not to commit. The radio on the shelf is on, but the volume is low enough that it becomes texture rather than information. A voice rises and falls in measured patterns. Static blooms, fades. The voice returns. Somewhere behind the word, there is a rhythm that keeps trying to become a warning, but is forced back down into civility. On a table, a map is pinned at the corners. The paper has been creased and smoothed so many times that its folds have lost their sharpness. The lines on it are precise, confident, drawn by hands that believed certainty could be inked into. A coffee ring stains one corner, a soft circle like an accidental target. A second man checks his wristwatch, then checks it again as if the first look didn't count. The leather strap is too tight, leaving a pale impression in his skin. He loosens it, then tightens it again. The small ritual is performed quietly, without embarrassment. Waiting makes everyone superstitious. There is a window, but the blinds are angled so that the outside arrives in narrow slats. Light on dust, light on a chair back, light on the curve of a helmet resting on the floor. The air tastes faintly of oil and paper and old smoke that has soaked into the walls over years, impossible to scrub out. Breathing feels like taking in the history of every previous hour spent in this same posture. Someone clears his throat, not to speak, just to remind himself he exists. A door opens somewhere deeper inside the building, and for a moment the entire room holds its breath, like a creature listening for the footstep that will decide the day. But it's only a runner passing by, moving too fast to be anyone important, a slip of motion and cloth. The door closes again with a soft final sound that feels heavier than it should. The pencil keeps turning. Roll, stop, roll, stop. A chair creaks as a man shifts his weight and immediately stills, as though the noise has betrayed him. He rests his palms flat on his knees. His fingers are clean, but his nails are dark with grime that will not come out. He stares at the map without blinking, not reading it, just occupying the space between looking and knowing. On the wall, a calendar page curls at the bottom. The date is crossed out in thick black strokes. Yesterday has been killed properly. Today remains untouched, intact, waiting to be marked. Another click from the crooked clock. Another minute gone. The radio voice pauses, replaced by a hiss that sounds like distant rain. Then the voice returns with a new cadence, more careful, as if stepping around something unseen on the floor. A man near the window reaches for his cigarette, then stops. He keeps his hand hovering above the pack, suspended there, caught between wanting calm and refusing to pretend. After a moment, he withdraws his hand and folds it into his other palm, locking it away. No one speaks the thing they are all thinking, because thinking feels safer when it has no shape. The coffee skin remains unbroken. The file drawer remains open. The blinds keep the outside in thin strips like time rationed. And in the center of it all sits the quiet understanding that whatever is supposed to happen has not happened yet, which means it still can. The clock clicks again. Somewhere in the building, a phone begins, and no one moves fast enough to answer it, as if they are all trying to make the seconds last longer than they're allowed to. The first time the place gives you its name, it does it indirectly. It comes from a stencil on a wooden crate in the corridor, half smeared by damp and handling. The letters are blocky, utilitarian, the kind meant to survive salt air and careless boots. Beneath it, there's an arrow that points nowhere helpful. Men pass the crate without looking at it, because looking at words feels too close to reading them. Inside the room, someone finally answers the ringing phone. The receiver is lifted with the careful speed of a man trying not to spill something invisible. Yes, he says. Not hello. Not who is this. Just yes. As if agreement is the only currency the line will accept. The voice on the other end is low and clipped, scrubbed clean of emotion. It delivers a time, then a second time, then stops. The man listening repeats the time back, exactly, and writes it down on the same scrap of paper already scarred with meaningless pencil line. He hangs up without a farewell. The dial tone is a thin, steady note, like a held breath, until the handset meets its cradle and smothers it. No one asks what was said. They all heard the rhythm of it anyway, the way the room changed by a fraction, the way the air tightened around their shoulders, the kind of change you feel in your teeth before you can name it. Outside the blinds, the light has shifted. The slats are brighter now, harsher. Dust motes drift through them in slow spirals, turning as if they have all the time in the world. Beyond that window is a world that is moving, engines warm, men walking with purpose, gates opening and closing in routine cycles that have happened 1,000 times. Routine is everywhere. It is the only thing that keeps the war from feeling like chaos every minute of the day. A clerk enters with a stack of forms held tight against his chest. He is too young to have lines around his eyes, but his face already knows the posture of caution. He sets the papers down in front of the map and begins sorting them by habit, not urgency. Stamp, flip, stamp. The stamp pad leaves a dark, oily scent at the edge of the table. A cup is finally lit. The skin on the coffee breaks silently. The man who drinks it doesn't taste it. His jaw works as if swallowing is just another duty. In the hallway again, boots, then pause, then boots moving away. A door opens, a door shuts. Somewhere, a typewriter begins clacking in an even cadence. A mechanical rain that makes everything feel official. The sound is oddly comforting, because it suggests the world is still being recorded properly. On the far wall hangs a board with pinned notices. Schedules. Rotations. Names written in neat lines. A few have been crossed out and replaced with others. The board looks like a classroom relic, except the names on it belong to men who sleep in bunks with rifles within reach. A sergeant, thin, older, mustache trimmed to regulation, leans in the doorway and watches the room the way a man watches a stove he doesn't trust. He doesn't step inside. He just stands there, one shoulder against the frame, and says, "Weather's holding." It's the sort of sentence that can mean anything. It can mean visibility. It can mean wind. It can mean luck. Someone nods without looking up. The nod feels practiced. Weather is always holding until it isn't. A second radio sits on another shelf, larger, wired into the building. It produces occasional bursts of sound, short calls, acknowledgments, call signs that float into the room and die before they can become a conversation. Each burst makes heads tilt slightly, like dogs reacting to a whistle. Each time, after a moment, the heads return to neutral. Normality is a performance here. It is rehearsed in small gestures. One man unwraps a sandwich from wax paper. The bread is compressed, a pale square, and the meat inside is thin enough to look apologetic. He eats anyway, chewing slowly, staring at nothing. Each bite is taken at the same pace, as if rhythm might keep the day from running away. Another man takes out a pocket knife and begins cleaning under his nails with the blade. Not because his nails matter, because his hands need something to do that isn't shaking. The blade flashes once in a strip of sunlight, and then disappears back into shadow. A messenger arrives with a folder tucked under his arm. He sets it on the table and taps it twice, a small signal, as if he's knocking on a coffin. The folder is opened. Pages are lifted. Eyes track lines. Lips move silently, not reading aloud, just following information the way a man follows footprint. Then gently, the folder is closed again. "We're on schedule," someone says. It is said with a kind of forced neutrality, as if the words themselves might spook something. On schedule. As if schedules have ever been more than paper promises, and as if the war respects clocks. In the corner, a coat hangs from a peg. It sways slightly whenever someone passes too close, brushing it with air. The movement is subtle, almost imaginary, but it keeps happening. Tiny motion in a room obsessed with stillness. The coat's buttons are polished. Someone took the time to do that. Someone believed, at least for a moment, that appearance mattered. A man with a pencil behind his ear checks the crooked wall clock and then checks a smaller clock on the desk, the way a person checks two witnesses to the same crime. The times match within the minute. That should be reassuring. Instead, it makes the minutes feel more real. Across the map, a finger traces a line and stops. The finger lifts. The line is traced again, exactly, as if repetition might change where it goes. The sergeant in the doorway clears his throat again. "Shift change in 20. Another nod. Another minute clicks away. Outside, somewhere beyond the blinds, an engine turns over and settles into a steady idle. The sound vibrates faintly through the walls, not loud enough to interrupt conversation, but present enough to remind everyone that metal is waking up. The clerk licks his thumb and flips another page. The stamp comes down, a clean, dark mark, approval, confirmation, a small act of certainty on a day that doesn't deserve it. No one mentions the irregularities that have already appeared, tiny as they are. An odd delay on the line, a message that arrived too neatly, a quietness on the radio that feels curated. Those things are like hairline cracks in glass. You can see them if you want to. You can also look away. Normality, after all, is a choice. The crooked clock clicks again, and in that instant the room feels the minutes closing in, not as time passing, but as time being spent. The first sign is so small it barely deserves the name. It comes in the form of a pause on the radio, just a fraction longer than the others. Not silence exactly, more like hesitation. The hiss lingers, swells slightly, then the voice returns, as if nothing happened. The cadence is steady again, professional, careful. Anyone listening could convince himself it was interference. Anyone who wanted to. A man by the shelf glances at the radio anyway. He does not comment. He adjusts the antenna by a few degrees, then steps back, satisfied. The room accepts the explanation without discussion. At the table, the map has been turned 90 degrees. No announcement, no ceremony. Someone simply rotated it to get a better angle. The pins shift under their own weight, settling again with faint metallic ticks. One pin tilts more than the others. No one straightens it. In the hallway, the typewriter stops. The sudden absence of sound feels louder than the clacking ever did. A few men look toward the door, waiting for the rhythm to resume. It doesn't. Somewhere down the corridor, paper rustles, a chair scrapes. But the machine itself remains quiet, as if it has finished saying everything it knows how to say. A runner appears in the doorway, breathing slightly faster than before. He delivers a folded note, not sealed, just creased once down the middle. The note is read by two men in succession. The first man's face does not change. The second man nods once, slowly, and hands it back. "Copy that," he says, though no one has spoken to him. The note is placed beneath the coffee cup, weighted down as if it might try to escape. Outside the blinds, the light dims briefly as something large passes by. Too fast to identify. Shadow, then brightness again. Dust motes continue their lazy spiral, unaware they've been interrupted. A conversation begins near the back of the room. It is about nothing important. Food. Someone mentions a place he knew before the war, a diner with bad pie and strong coffee. Another man snorts softly at the memory. The sound is almost a laugh. Almost. While they talk, one of them checks his watch again. This time he does not adjust the strap. At the radio, a different voice breaks in. Same language, same formality, but unfamiliar. It gives a call sign, waits, then repeats it. There is a delay before the acknowledgement comes. Not long enough to justify concern, just long enough to be noticed. "Line's crowded," someone mutters, offering the explanation before anyone asks. The unfamiliar voice disappears. The familiar one resumes. The room exhales without realizing it had tightened. Near the open file cabinet, a folder slips partway out of place. Gravity, nothing more. The label on its spine is visible now, handwritten instead of typed. The ink is slightly smeared, as if the writer's hand had been damp. No one pushes it back in. The sergeant returns to the doorway, checks his watch, and frowns, not sharply, just enough to crease his brow. "They're a few minutes behind," he says, and shrugs as if lateness is a law of nature. "Plenty of time," someone replies automatically. Time, after all, has been generous so far. A man crosses the room and opens a window a few inches despite the air slips in, carrying a faint smell of fuel and sea, or dust and oil, depending on where you imagine yourself standing. The blinds rattle softly, then settle. The man closes the window again, as if he has seen enough. The pencil resumes its turning. Roll, stop, roll, stop. This time, when the graphite touches paper, it makes a sharper sound. The point has worn down unevenly. The line it draws is darker, heavier. The man stares at it for a second longer than before, then flips the paper over and continues as if nothing has changed. On the wall, the calendar page curls a little more. The paper is drying out, losing its grip. Another message comes through the radio. Routine, procedural, but it is missing a detail. A small one. A number, perhaps. The omission passes unchallenged. The response is given anyway, smooth and confident, filling in what should have been said. No one says, "That's odd." Odd requires attention. Attention requires decisions. In the corner, the coat on the peg sways again, though no one has passed near it this time. Just a small movement. barely perceptible, as if the air itself has shifted its weight. The crooked clock clicks. A minute later than expected. No one corrects it. The room begins to feel smaller, though nothing has moved. Chairs are closer together now, knees nearly touching the table. Men lean in without realizing it, drawn by a gravity that has nothing to do with the map between them. The air has grown warmer, thicker, carrying the faint residue of breath and fabric and restrained tension. The radio speaks again, and this time the voice is careful in a way it hasn't been. Each word arrives with a pause beside it, as if the speaker is choosing where to step. The message is ordinary on its surface. Confirmation, acknowledgement, routine exchange, but the pauses linger just long enough to feel deliberate. Someone reaches for the volume knob, turns it up a fraction, then stops. Louder would make it feel important would require a response. A man near the table rubs his eyes with the heel of his hand. When he lowers it, the skin beneath is red, irritated. He blinks hard, as if trying to clear more than fatigue. His gaze settles on the map again, tracing familiar lines that suddenly seem too confident, too clean. "There's still time," someone says, not to anyone in particular. The words hang in the room, waiting to be agreed with. They are not challenged. Silence accepts them as fact. In the corridor, boots approach and stop outside the door. There is a murmur, low, private. Then the boots retreat again. Whatever decision was nearly brought inside remains in the hallway, pacing. A folder is opened once more. This time, pages are flipped faster, the sound sharper, less patient. A finger runs down a column and stops. The finger hesitates, then moves on, skipping the line entirely. It is easier not to linger. At the window, the blinds tremble faintly. Outside, the steady idle of engines has multiplied. One becomes two. Two becomes several. The vibrations stack on top of each other until the walls seem to hum. A restrained mechanical breath waiting to be released. The sergeant steps fully into the... He closes the door behind him, not hard but with intention. The click of the latch is quiet, final in a way no one comments on. "They're asking for confirmation," he says. No one asks who they are. Everyone knows. A man clears his throat. "They already have it." The sergeant nods slowly. "That's what I told them." There is a moment, brief, fragile, where the room seems to hold open a narrow door, a chance to say something else. A chance to ask for clarification, to delay, to adjust. The men glance at one another, eyes meeting and sliding away, each silently assigning responsibility to the next. The radio crackles. Static blooms, then collapses into a voice that sounds closer now, as if the distance has shrunk. The message is short. It ends with a phrase that does not sound like a question, but waits for an answer anyway. The answer is given. A man reaches for his cigarette again. This time he lights it. The flame flares briefly, reflected in his eyes, then disappears as he inhales. Smoke curls upward, thin and controlled, adding another layer to the already crowded air. On the table, the coffee cup is pushed aside to make room for another set of papers. The ring it leaves behind is darker now, more defined, a mark that will not fade easily. The crooked clock clicks. This time, everyone hears it. The minute hand moves forward, deliberate, irreversible. A man glances at it and then looks away quickly, as if eye contact might implicate. Outside the window, the light shifts again, dimmer now, filtered through something larger than clouds. The engines change pitch, no longer idling, not fully moving, waiting in their own way. The room has entered a different kind of quiet. Not absence of sound, but absence of interruption. The kind of silence that forms after the last objection has been swallowed. A final check of watches, a final nod. No orders given, no objections raised. The door that might have been opened remains closed, and somewhere between one breath and the next, the window where this could still be stopped begins to narrow. It happens without ceremony. A hand moves across the table and slides a single sheet of paper a few inches to the left. Not enough to draw attention, just enough to place it within reach of someone else. The paper makes a soft sound against the wood, almost apologetic. The man it reaches for does not pick it up right away. He looks at it, then at the map, then at the radio. His jaw tightens once, subtly, like a muscle remembering an old injury. When he finally takes the paper, he does so with 2 fingers, as if minimizing contact might also minimize consequence. He reads. Nothing in his expression changes. He folds the paper along its existing crease, presses it flat with the side of his thumb, and sets it down again. This time it is placed decisively, squared with the table's edge. Alignment feels important now. On the radio, a voice announces a procedural step. The words are clean, neutral, designed to sound like progress. There is no drama in them. That is what makes them dangerous. "Stand by," the voice says. No one speaks. No one objects. Standing by is easy. Standing by requires nothing. The sergeant reaches into his pocket and removes a small notebook. He flips to a page marked by a bent corner. His pen hesitates above the paper, hovering just long enough to suggest doubt, then touches down. Ink flows. A note is made. A record is created. History, quietly filing itself. The man with the cigarette stubs it out halfway through, crushing it with more force than necessary. The ashtray rattles. He doesn't apologize. No one looks at him. A clock on the desk, smaller than the crooked one on the wall, ticks audibly. Someone must have wound it. Each tick is sharp, precise, indifferent. It does not jump by minutes. It insists on seconds. Tick, tick, tick. At the window, the blinds are no longer rattling. They are still. Too still. Outside, the engine noise has smoothed into a steady, unified tone, like a single breath drawn by many machines at once. The radio crackles again. A confirmation comes through. Then another. Each one is acknowledged. Each acknowledgement removes a layer of uncertainty, replacing it with momentum. A man opens his mouth, then closes it. He adjusts his collar instead, straightening fabric that does not matter. The gesture feels like surrender dressed up as neatness. Someone says, "All set," quietly, as if afraid the words might echo. No one contradicts him. The folder that had been weighted under the coffee cup is retrieved. Its contents are removed and placed on the table in a clean stack. The empty folder is set aside, suddenly useless. The papers are what matter now. A finger taps once against the tabletop. Not a signal, just nervous energy escaping. On the radio, a final procedural phrase is spoken. It is the kind of phrase designed to mark a boundary without announcing it. A line crossed politely, without sound. The response is given immediately this time. No pause, no hesitation. The room absorbs that speed, understands what it means. The crooked wall clock clicks. This time, no one pretends not to hear it. The minute hand advances, and with it goes the last fraction of flexibility the moment possessed. The option to revisit, to rephrase, to delay by asking one more question evaporates. Not in a rush, but in a quiet closing, like a door eased shut by someone who does not want it to slam. The radio falls silent, not dead, just waiting. The men remain where they are, suspended between action and aftermath, aware now, though none will say it, that whatever comes next no longer depends on them. The point has been passed. Even if no one noticed the exact second it happened, the room exhales. Not as a group, not in relief, just the subtle release that comes after a decision has already made itself. Shoulders lower by degrees. Hands find stillness. No one moves to leave. No one reaches for anything new. There is nothing left to adjust. The radio remains silent, its face dark, its dials frozen where they were last set. The hiss does not return. The absence feels deliberate, as if the air itself has decided to wait. Outside the blinds, the light has thinned. What filters through now is flatter, grayer, stripped of warmth. Dust still drifts, but slower, heavier, as if gravity has increased. The engines beyond the walls hold their unified tone, neither rising nor falling, a sustained note, drawn out until meaning blurs. A man near the table counts his breaths without realizing, in through the nose, out through the mouth. He stops at 10, then starts again. Each cycle feels like borrowing time. The crooked wall clock clicks. No one looks at it. The smaller desk clock continues its insistence. Tick, tick, tick. Each second arrives cleanly, then vanishes, leaving nothing behind but expectation. It does not speed up. It does not slow down. It offers no mercy. Someone shifts in his chair, then stills halfway through, as if movement itself has become an intrusion. The room has learned a new rule. Do not disturb the moment. A hand rests on the edge of the table, fingers curled just enough to suggest tension. The knuckles are pale. The hand does not withdraw. It stays where it is, anchoring its owner to the present. In the hallway, there is no foot traffic, no boots, no voices. The building feels emptied, though it is not. Everyone who remains has found their place and stopped. The blinds creak once, softly, reacting to a pressure change too distant to hear directly. Outside, something shifts. Not motion, not yet, just the promise of it. The engines respond with the slightest change in pitch, almost imperceptible, like a breath being held just a fraction longer than before. A man closes his eyes. He opens them again immediately, as if afraid of missing something. There is nothing to see. That is the problem. The map on the table lies untouched. Its lines no longer invite tracing. They have become irrelevant, artifacts of a time when routes still mattered more than consequences. A corner of the paper lifts slightly, stirred by air no one can feel. The radio remains silent. Waiting has become the only activity left. The crooked clock clicks again. Somewhere beyond the walls, far enough away to be abstract, something aligns. Not an explosion, not a sound, just a convergence, the final pieces settling into the position they were always moving toward. Inside the room, no one speaks. No one reaches for the door. No one checks a watch. They all listen. For something that has not happened yet. For the sound that will arrive too late to change any. The seconds stretch thin, translucent, fragile, and then time seems to pause, suspended on the edge of a breath that has not yet been released. No one marks the moment. There is no signal, no word, no visible shift to announce that the waiting has reached its final shape. The room simply exists inside a thinner version of time now, stretched so tight it hums. The desk clock keeps ticking. Tick, tick, tick. Each sound lands cleanly, then vanishes, leaving a brief vacuum where the next second should be. The men feel that space more than the sound itself. It presses against their ears, their ribs, the back of their eyes. The radio remains dark, not failed, not abandoned, just quiet in a way that feels intentional, as if it knows its next sound will end something. A man's jaw works slowly, chewing on nothing. Another's fingers flex once, then curl back into stillness. Breath moves carefully through lungs, measured and controlled, as if air itself has become rationed. Outside the blinds, the engines hold their tone, no longer warming, no longer waiting to be told what to do. They sound ready, poised, balanced on a narrow edge between restraint and release. The blinds do not move. The coat on the peg does not sway. The open file drawer remains open, frozen mid-thought. Somewhere far away, too distant to be located, a sequence completes itself. Not an action, an alignment, a chain pulled taut until slack no longer exists. Inside the room, one man becomes acutely aware of the weight of his boots against the floor. Another notices the faint pulse in his wrist, the way blood insists on continuing its work regardless of what the world is about to become. No one looks at the map. No one reaches for the door. No one speaks. The crooked wall clock clicks. The sound feels louder than it should. The minute hand approaches its next mark with unbearable patience, dragging the present along behind it. This is the last stretch of time that still belongs to the room, to breath, to thought, to restraint. The radio crackles. Just once. Not a voice. Not yet. Only the sound of connection being made. Every head lifts. Every body stills. Every second narrows to a point so fine it threatens to disappear altogether. And the world holds there, balanced, silent, irreversible. One breath before history exhales.